I want to describe tantrum, and then I want to show you kind of what some going thinking is and why I think it's mistaken, or why we think it's mistaken. And then I'm going to give you an actual strategy. In fact, the strategy you're going to be able to get, I'll give you a printed copy of it. I'm realizing this is a much bigger issue in some ways than I've recognized. And tantrums are kind of a big deal because they disrupt the moment, they disrupt your life, they disrupt, not fun for the child, and they disrupt other people. What we're going to do is walk through some thoughts about tantrums. And this has been a long-term concern for us because we had 5 kids. And insofar as I know, and Jody, you can correct me on this, I do not recall our kids having tantrums. I've said that, but we just did not do tantrums. And I didn't exactly understand why or how we did not do tantrums, but I understand a good bit better now. What I want to think about is what exactly is going on with a tantrum, so that we can kind of together really think through a better strategy. Now, to do this, what I want to do is I want to describe tantrum, and then I want to show you kind of what some going thinking is and why I think it's mistaken, or why we think it's mistaken. And then I'm going to give you an actual strategy. In fact, the strategy you're going to be able to get, I'll give you a printed copy of it. So if you'll go to independenthomeschool.com and sign up for our free stuff, I'm going to send this out to everyone. And in the future, it'll just be available with this part of the video. So let's talk about tantrums. What's a tantrum? Describe that.
A kid wants something that they're not getting usually, and they just throw a fit. We think of tantrums as they're yelling, screaming, maybe throwing themselves on the floor, kicking their legs, maybe pushing you, maybe physically trying to mess with you. It's loud, it's uncomfortable, out of control, we would say.
Yeah.
Over the top.
And where do they happen?
Oh, they can happen in your house. They can happen in a grocery store. They can happen in a mall, in a car.
And what happens is you're so immediately caught up in the moment, you just want to get over the moment. And I think that's a part of what we see as the problem. We're trying to get over something in the moment. And as a result, we're not coming up with a strategy that's going to help us long term. It's just going to be, as we said, in the moment. So let me, I was looking at this this week, and I've run across this idea more than twice of gentle parenting. And I'm not a fan of it, but I'm not mad about it. I'm not exactly against it. I just think it was built as a reaction to neglectful or hyper authoritarian parenting. Those aren't good. But when we build anything as a reaction to something, we're not really thinking principle. We're just thinking reaction. It tends to be a ditch to ditch phenomenon. And so what I want to try to offer, and I'm going to stress this, that what we're aiming for is to grow happy adults. So there's a long-term thought here, and that's what's in my head, in our head. So what I want to do is just try to walk you through what I've seen out here. Here's a good example of it. Which one is that? Yeah, good. So here's an example, and you can find this kind of stuff online, but this one was quite striking to me. How helping kids cope improves behavior. And the idea is that you have a problem behavior. Okay, so there's a behavior going on, and you can take 2 paths. You can either validate, well, let's go the bad way in this model. You can invalidate the emotion. You know, you shouldn't feel that way or something like that. And that drives the child's feelings to get bigger and more intense. And the child then can't regulate his or her emotions. And so the problem behavior grows. That's that model. The solution is to validate the emotion and soothe the child. And then the child learns to regulate his or her emotions. And when their emotions are better, their behavior is better. That's it. That's all you need. There are a number of problems with this, at least in my way of thinking. And so I'll show you my grumpy notes here as I was looking at this model. And it works like this. There are a lot of pieces to it. So I start looking at this and I go, just the word cope. So you may not be able to see all this. Probably can. I wasn't planning to show this to you, so I didn't make it graphically
It
glorious.
was for your own
Yeah.
thinking.
So cope. That means get by, deal with the moment. The focus is coping. You're trying to cope. And I'm going to argue is what you want to do is help your kids learn. And I want to stress that we are chief learning officers in our homeschools and our families. That's what we are. And what we want to think about is we want to cause them to learn. You can't exactly teach everything. Teaching isn't perfectly mechanical. If it was, everybody would do the same. You teach them and they learn. No, most of this stuff is what we've got to personally figure out for ourselves. And we can be exposed to things, but we've got to learn it ourselves. So our whole orientation is helping kids to learn how to be their own teachers, basically. And so as you go as you go through this, what you see or what I see is that we got a problem behavior and we want to validate it. Now, I don't know what that means. Does that mean we want to acknowledge that they have a feeling? Does that mean the feeling is good? So I use the word legitimizing. So are you legitimizing their upset, their panic, their anger, their screaming, their crying, their traumatizing? And if you're trying to legitimize it, if that's what you mean, it's a problem. I wrote over here, just because one feels an emotion, why does that mean it's valid? It's valid that you're feeling it. We had an example, Jody and I were talking this morning, of a child sees a rope and they think the rope's a snake, and so they freak out. And so what we can do is legitimize to them or validate to them that their feeling about it being a snake and snakes are scary, and I understand you feel this way, et cetera, is basically a tactic of saying the emotions you're feeling are good, appropriate. But I'm going to ask, are they? Is that really how life works and what we want to go through? Because what I think you're doing is when you validate an emotion, you can invalidate behavior. And that's where the concern is. So the child learns to regulate, and I wrote out why or how. And Jody has a big point on this that I'll let her mention in just a sec. And then just because you have less emotion, why does that mean less problems or less outstanding emotion? I mean, passion emotion leads to better behaviors for sure. But when you look at this, if the reactive cycle is they get really upset, you soothe them, legitimize their being upset, I would argue that's going to increase this behavior problem, or it's at least going to repeat the pattern. So everything that comes along, they don't want, they don't like what's going on, they misinterpret reality, and they freak. It's going to be a problem. So tell what you were concerned about here.
Where I see that child learns to regulate, what I've noticed is that the parent is always involved in this situation. The parent is always reminding the child, now just breathe or calm, whatever it is that their verbiage might be. I don't see how the child's learning that if the parent has to always be there reminding them or telling them what to do in that situation.
Yeah, so you become part of the actual regulation process. In theory, you're wanting to teach them, take a breath, calm down, asking it, something is going on. And by the way, because humans, let me stress this, are so adaptive and they can teach themselves, it can still work. It's kind of like um, phonics versus whole language or look-say method. Well, a lot of people will learn to read no matter what you throw at them. That doesn't prove it actually works. It just means there are some examples where it does work. On balance, we know that you teach kids phonics, and that teaches them to decode language, written language. And as a result, they can learn to read. It's a similar thing here. Depending on how a parent handles it, might be great, especially if they include consequences and stuff, which is commonly mentioned. But it also can just reinforce the problem, and that's usually what's going on. Children have been trained to have tantrums. They don't have a tantrum gene. And behind this, I would argue there's it's really victim training by and large, maybe not for everybody. And it's very disempowering because it leads a child to become a victim of what happens and how it makes them feel. So constantly things are happening, it's how it makes them feel. And then you're rewarding the process. And the reason is these people are caught thinking emotions are something independent. And they're not. Look, emotions are not just a thing. It's not like we just have emotions and emotional damage, etc. I wrote somewhere on one of these. Yeah. I want to be sure to mention this. Yeah. So I said, no one is an emotional mess. They're just a mess. So if somebody's a mess, then they are indeed just a mess. I'm not sure how this is. Oh, that'd be great. I'll just let this happen. So in this context, and what we're dealing with is that the answer is you want to give a child a strategy for getting what they want. The problem here is they're not getting what they want. And that is not necessarily a good thing. We want to teach children to learn how to get what they want. That is a glorious, gracious, awesome thing to do, to get what they want. So now they always don't want the right thing. So there's another piece to it, but training them to have different strategies. And that's what I'd say the bottom line is. The reason you see tantrums and tantrums continue off and on or regularly is because the child only has one way to do it. They don't have another strategy. It's not out there for them. And so that's why I get over here with the assumption is emotion. And so I ask, what if better behavior leads to better emotions? So if they learn how to act better, they'll actually and get strategies in place to be able to get what they want in a good way. They don't go through all this emotional rigmarole. The assumption is emotions come before thinking, strategy, and behavior, that emotions are separate. I'm going to argue that we can have better actions and strategy, get better results, and have better feelings and better emotions. So what I want to offer you is I'm going to walk through this. We're going to get our faces back on here. So I've got a sheet on how to fix tantrums. I'm going to walk through some of this. And you can get a copy of it. You will get a copy if you're on our mailing list. But if you want a copy and you're not on our mailing list, just go to independenthomeschool.com, sign up for our free stuff. You can unsubscribe anytime, but I'll make sure that you get a copy because I'm going to send it out to everybody else. Now, so yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, I'll give a copy of that too, or
Somebody was asking about that.
I might clean it up. So I've been having a little allergy problem, so my voice is coming and going. Anything you want to say so far?
No, this is gonna be a really good day. It's a really important topic, and it's so easy to handle. It's such a disruption to your life and your family and the child, but we can teach you ways to really make it not a big deal anymore. And
Yeah.
it's so freeing.
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, I'm convinced of this. So part of the trick, I'm going to read through this, but I want to stress that one of the things about self-soothing is it's the kind of thing you have to learn for yourself. We can expose them to ideas, but we can't teach it. That's something you have to do internally. It has to be done that way. I thought of an example this week. I was sharing with some guys that when I was a kid, I used to cry a lot. And part of it, I'd get upset. And dad, apparently, mother told me, loved to bring me in when his buddies were over playing cards and irritate me because I get so mad and I look so cute when I was mad. That's cruel. Don't do that. But I would cry, and then people would ridicule me for crying, which is what we're looking at the reaction to that. That's not a way to do a child, just to shame them and get onto them for being upset. But what happened when I was about four or so, uh, or five, somewhere in there, and I was going through all this crying. Whenever I would get upset, I'd get real upset. I guess kind of a tantrum, a crying from and then they would shame me and laugh at me or ridicule me, try to get me to stop. Well, I was playing in our ditch. It's really a big ravine. It had trees in it, all kinds of stuff, and it was a fun place to play back in the day when you could go outside and play. And I was by myself, and I fell off something and hit some rocks and all, and I scraped myself, and I was bleeding. And I'm sitting there bleeding and looking at it, and then I noticed I was not crying. In that moment, I discovered I had a will. And I literally learned that I didn't have to cry. I could think about it, learn something else. And I began on a path of self-soothing. And that's what's going to happen with your kids. So let me read through these things real quick. And then we're going to take whatever questions you want or questions about this. First, tantrums, and you're going to get a copy of this if you're on our mailing list. Tantrums grow out of a short-term thinking to deal with the moment. Long-term means no tantrums ever. When you start thinking long terms and train them, no tantrums ever. That's what you're going for. The aim is we want to grow happy adults. If they're happy as kids, that's awesome. We like that. But the assumption that if a kid's happy, they'll grow up to be a happy adult is kind of crazy. I mean, most of us, have counterexamples. If not in our life, maybe the person we're sitting near. But that's not how the game works. You can make a child happy all the time by giving them whatever they want, and in the due course of time, the old world would be that you spoiled them, right? Next, a tantrum child is stuck with only one strategy to get what they want. So we're wanting to teach them other strategies, and we do this naturally, like say please, that kind of stuff. Tantrum strategy, their tantrum strategy, the one strategy they have is unhappiness. It's focused on unhappiness. They're at the edge of unhappy all the time. And that's what they're battling with. And it tends to cycle to where they're unhappy more and more and more and more because the unhappiness is getting rewarded. One thing we learn to say to ourselves is, how are we teaching you this? How are we causing you to learn this? How are we reinforcing it? So in the tantrum strategy, it's been taught or learned by inconsistently rewarding and not rewarding the tantrum. The strategy causes it to grow and intensify. Now, here's what I mean. If they have a tantrum and you give them what they want, or you reward it somehow, they perceive it as a reward, and that's the trick, then you reinforced it. If you then the next time don't, but the third time do, all you're doing is teaching them even better how to do it. We know from dolphins. If you give them 5 fish every time, they jump less and less. If you mix up the reward, it intensifies their jump. It's a unpredictable reward, but it works enough to keep trying it. And so what you do is you train a child to have a bigger tantrum and a bigger tantrum because sometimes it works and it might work this time. And when you see it, they think it's going to work. That's why they're doing it. And it's the only strategy they've got. So, simply put, it didn't work. If it didn't work, they wouldn't use it. Look, if their tantrums didn't work, they wouldn't use it because they're not dumb. They use something that works, and their goal is to get what they want, which is your goal and my goal. We're all doing that. That's not a evil thing. It's a true thing. And so if it didn't work, they wouldn't use it, or at least admit if they didn't think it would work, they wouldn't use it. So they at least think it's going to work. So here are 7 points. 1, teach them better behavioral strategies for getting what they want. You just want to teach them better strategies for getting things they want. Number 2, make sure they experience some successes with the new strategies. So if you send them to their room and say, look, if you're quiet, I'm going to give you whatever they wanted, the cookie or whatever it was. And if they've been quiet just a little bit, even a few minutes, and they're actually in the room, they're quiet, take that cookie in there. Because then that's showing them, oh, this new strategy actually does work. 3rd, never allow a tantrum to succeed in getting what they want, not even once. You just got to get over it. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. But no more tantrums won't work. In fact, literally, I think we would have, and we did it earlier with them, even as babies. We just didn't do tantrums. But we would, if you think about this properly, what you want to do is if they have a tantrum, even if it's for a good thing, that by itself says you don't get it. It doesn't matter what it is. A tantrum means it won't work. So they know that strategy is not anything to ever try. And especially as they get older, teens, adults, people that have tantrums, is you rescue them. You rescue an angry man, and it's just going to be more anger. That's how it works, quote a proverb. 4th, make the goal a do want, never a don't want. This is kind of important. I don't want them to yell. I don't want them to tell me no. That's not giving them a replacement behavior like we talk in our parenting book. What you want is a do goal. I want you to say, please. I want you to say, yes, ma'am, or yes, mother, or yes, something. Keep catching yourself of I don't want. That doesn't give you or the child something to really focus on. 5th, teach that there is something important to learn if the strategy doesn't work, especially that we don't always get what we want. So you can at least learn we don't always get what we want. That doesn't work. But what you're also trying to do is say, okay, that didn't work. How can we do it different next time? Did this worked, this did this, it didn't turn out. What can we learn? And that's what we get to do. We're in the process of learning better strategies to do life. Number 6, teach them that some things are wrong to want. This is important. There are some things that are wrong to want. Taking things from another sibling or a friend, that's wrong. Hitting people with your play shovel, wrong. These are wrong things. And I'll tell you the easy way to go is just use the golden rule over and over. Do unto others, have them do unto you. Would you want that? Do you want them? Help them understand that there are things that you want. And when you want a bad thing, it's usually violating the rights or domain of others. That's where the problem is. You don't want them to think that anything I want is fine. So, you don't want to be hit. You don't want to be scratched. You don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be made fun of. It's a golden rule. 7, tantrums are to be experienced alone. So leave the scene or send them to their room to tantrumize. So, and this is part of what we learned. If the baby, was having a fit.
Toddler, not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, even younger than a toddler or younger, if they're just having a fit,
okay,
and we powdered them and fed them and do everything, we just need to let them be in a space where they can run that fit. Same with toddler, whatever else, because that's how they learn to self-soothe. If we're always doing it, I mean, if you put a baby down that's upset and they're crying and they're taken care of and there's nothing wrong, they may just need to burn some energy. But if they're crying and you let it go for a little bit and then go and get them up, you've just taught them, okay, that's how long it takes. Instead of letting them calm down, I would let them, once they calm down, I'd run in and get them and love on them and just say, yeah, that's the way the game works. And so they're to be experienced alone. So they need to go to their room and do it. They need to be somewhere else, or you need to leave the room. This is definitely not the soothing the child thing, but I'm just saying we're not going to have tantrums anymore. Or we're not going. You can have them, but you can have them by yourself and not torture the family. Or more specifically, what you're doing is you're trying to teach them that a tantrum strategy is not how to get what you want. Let's find a better one. And then they get to learn better strategies. So here would be the how-to, and then I'll be done. Have we gone too long? How to. First, explain the new game plan with an apology and include all the children, because the others probably doing something similar. They're probably playing a role, especially if they irritate the tantrum kid. But you say, look, I'm sorry, we've done this wrong. We've taught you to have tantrums. I'd say that. Somehow, but we've taught you that and we haven't taught you a better way to go. And so what we want to do is give you a better game plan to learn how to get what you want. Second, I'm sorry that we've only taught you one way to get what you want. Well, same thing. We've only taught you one way. That's why you do this. We want you to learn some new ways. Next, we're going to teach you new and better ways. Make that promise. Next, first, if you cry, scream, yell, you will not get what you want ever. They need to know this up front. This is not going to happen anymore. It's just not a thing. That will not work. Second, every time you cry, scream, yell to get something, you're going to get a consequence. And you're not mad here. You're matter of fact. There's going to be a consequence of some type. And you get to figure that out. And I'll give you a suggestion in a second. But they need to understand that that strategy is not going to work. Third, the more you learn better ways to get what you want, the more surprises you'll get. Maybe I'll dance for you. Maybe you'll get a toy, a surprise toy. I'll call a friend and brag about you to somebody. You can make up all kinds of stuff. But something that says when you learn to self-regulate and don't do the tantrum, there's going to be really good payoffs. Besides you get what you want, I'm going to notice it. My kids always like me to dance a jig, or I don't know if they liked it, but they like thinking they made me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, here's just an idea, and you can substitute what you want. Every day with no tantrums, meaning you go a whole day, no crying, no screaming, no yelling. You get to watch one after supper show. Now, that's an example. You can use anything else, but it's a thing that oftentimes motivates kids if y'all include shows,
Especially during the while you're training
Yeah,
them, not
this
the
isn't
rest
going
of your
forever.
life.
Yeah, this is going to go till they get it, and then you can stop it, And if you need to say we're going to do it for a month and evaluate, that's fine. But every day with no tantrums, crying, screaming, yelling, you'll get to watch one after supper show. All the children will get to watch the show. If there's one tantrum, no one gets to watch the show. And this enlists everybody in on it. It's part of how we potty train. The baby gets Skittles, learning potty training, what baby, but older. But they're get a Skittles. But then we figured out, everybody gets the Skittles when you go. And so everybody was enlisted and go, don't you need to go? Don't you need to go? Something like that. So one tantrum, nobody gets to watch. And you say these words, maybe tomorrow, that's the way it goes. And you have to do it right when they have the tantrum. It's just after supper. Sorry. In fact, I wouldn't mention it. I'd just go on and then say, yeah, it didn't work. Maybe tomorrow. So that would be a simplified game plan ish. There's more to it. If you read our parenting book, The Absolute Quickest Way to Help Your Child Change, we have 4 questions in there you go through that help you look at the behavior, how you've taught it, a new behavior, vision for it, what you do want, and how to encourage it. So there's more to it than that. But this is really about basically understanding human nature. And human beings want things, and they need to learn good strategies, ways to cooperate to get it, and not growing them up to be hyper victims, hypersensitive, reacting constantly. I need safe spaces. I need you to behave the right way for me. I need you to give me stuff, because that's just going to actually contribute to growing a generation of narcissists. That's basically what it's going to do. And though it sounds good, I would say it's not. In fact, I put down here, last thing I'll say is this approach is largely built out of a reactive philosophy or solution. I don't like that, so I'm going to create this. It's also very Freudian, and pretty much most educated therapists understand Freud was mistaken about most everything. But if you think the idea is you're going to have these little traumas in life and they're going to dictate horror for you forever, you're caught in that Freudian model. There's a lot more going on with human beings. There's traits, there's interests, there's genetics, there's IQ. There's all kinds of things going on. And it's not just, oh, if they have a trauma, it's going to be bad. If that worked, can you just have such a great time at Disney World that you never can be upset again? That's not how life works. This is about learning. And I would say, and this would be, I'd be a little more controversial here, but it's kind of seems to me an over mothering, an over feminizing strategy. I don't want an over fathering, over masculine strategy. I know that's a big debate nowadays, but I still would argue they're natural women, they're natural men. There are designs in it. Women tend to be more feelings or emotional oriented in their values and decisions. And we know this, like the Myers-Briggs has to actually include that as a compensation in all their testing, because they know there's an orientation with estrogen and non-severed corpus callosum and dynamics in the game, that there's this nurture feeling type orientation. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's out of balance. And so we need both. That's learning those both sides, learning how to be empowered and learning how to love. So power and love, these things are very important for people to get together. Whew, what do you want to say?
Just I hope you're feeling encouraged, actually. And we've just been seeing more and more lately. It seems like this approach that we're not so greatly happy about. And it's not just that it just doesn't work. And I really feel like it harms the child. We're just seeing so many young adults, 20s and all, and they're not functioning well in the world.
Yeah, and we could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's parenting is an experiment, but you might want to ask every now and then, how's my experiment going? Because if you get your orientation, say, I'm trying to get you ready for adulthood, then they don't like math. Yeah, so what? And we figure out how to get over it, you're still going to learn it. And when we get out of that negotiation, trying to reward them, manipulate how they feel, instead of showing them a better strategy, what's a better strategy of how to do your math and enjoy it? Better strategy, let's make it reasonable. Better strategy, get your work done. Better strategy, get your work done so you're free from it. Better strategy, notice how you're actually learning. So,
well, we need that. Yeah, better strategy to get that toy you want that the other kid has, because you're already teaching them not to just grab it from them. So you're already doing this, in ways you show them. No, what you do is you say, please, or when you're through playing with that, may I have it? Or you tell them to watch when the other child drops it, you run and get it, or just we already do this.
All right, so let's hit the chat box and let's see what's going on. So, yes, Jody, you're right, Jody. I was just in this session yesterday. I don't know which part, but cool. Nicole asks, what if they can't have what they want? How do you give them a strategy for coping in that situation? Yeah, and that would be an example. So they can't have what they want, and I addressed that later in the conversation, where you're having to teach them that sometimes you can't have what you want. That's the way it goes. Sorry, you don't get to drive till you're 16. Apparently none of them want to drive anymore, but that'd be the idea. So there's some things you can't have what you want, or you can't have it yet. So like your debriefing, you can't have that, or how could you get it? A different strategy. But you're right. Sometimes you can't have what you want. What we found is that when a child really understands it's not happening, like they want to stay up later. So what's their strategy? Well, the strategy is to get older and then you can stay up later. But in this home, we have bedtimes and you go to bed at your bedtime, and that'll never change. And once they get that they can't have what they want, they won't want it anymore. I promise you. It's the way it goes. If a guy wanted to marry a girl and the girl passed away in a car accident, he would no longer want to marry her because he can't have it. When you know you can't have something, you won't want it. So there are certain things that you just say, that's not what we want. What could you want instead of that thing?
Yeah, we're not saying, yes, we're not saying that's disappointing. I know you're disappointed. We're just saying that you don't need to fall apart about it. But yeah, it's disappointing that we can't do this or you can't do this. And really, yeah, to redirect. So that's not going to happen. What can we do? What would make you happy today that we can do? What,
Yeah.
you can redirect there. That's fine.
Yeah.
We're not,
Perfect.
yeah, we're not trying to be
And
cruel here.
and usually that's what you want. You want something else they can have. I want cake for snack. Nope, not having cake. You can have other things. You have apple with peanut butter. You can have, you can list whatever else it is. Um, Nicole adds, just to make sure I understand, is it your theory that children will generally learn by experience what emotions are, that they will pass, etc., on their own? Like you don't think they need the parents to guide them through the process? Yeah. So what I would argue is that emotions are actually a response to how we're thinking. They're not a separate thing. So there's thinking, and it drives emotion, and emotion drives action. But actions can then influence our emotions, and our emotions can tempt us for how to think. So that's where the cycle is. So actually, what we want them to do is understand, yeah, it's a rope, it's not a snake, right? They may need to learn too that snakes generally run away from you, and if you stay away from them, they're not that fast. They're not attacking people. That's not the game. So when you understand this, what you're trying to do, we used to do a thing with the kids where they might be upset, and we get them to jump up and down and say, "At least my armpits don't stink. At least my armpits don't stink." And then they start laughing, and it break their state. What they're thinking. So what they get to learn is emotions do pass. That's a really good point. But there are also things you can do. You can think about it in a different way. You can understand it in a different way. You can come up with a better strategy. So all these things are about learning how our emotions work. But by and large, and that's why we have an emotions course for you. By and large, the long-term solution is learning to think about things in a certain way so you don't get emotionally upset. I drive down a particular road into town, and it is 55 miles per hour. And there's never a time that I don't get behind somebody who's going 50 or 45 or 40. Now, there's a time that would bother me, but now I go, it's a little confusing, but there are no mile markers, and maybe they don't know, but I just generate. It may be an old person. Maybe they're about, and they think they're going real fast, or maybe they're about to turn. Maybe they just don't know the speed limit. They don't want to risk getting a ticket. Maybe their car can only go this. Now, part of the problem is there's no place to pass on this road for several miles. So we're all kind of getting stuck. But I'm sitting there going, also, if I'm late, it's going to be a minute. It's not, maybe two. It's not going to be a dramatic thing. And so I have a way to think about it so I don't have the same irritations and upset. And so if you understand the reason you're having upsetting thoughts or upsetting feelings is because you're thinking upsetting thoughts. And that's what goes on with kids. I want it now. I didn't get it. Wah. Well, yeah, we're going to have to learn. That's not going to serve you well as an adult. And we're trying to raise happy adults.
Happy adults. Oh, I definitely glad you brought up the emotions course. If y'all have the emotion course and you haven't gone through it, please go through it. It's wonderful for grown-ups, for kids. It's a great resource. If you have it, please go through it. But yeah, we're not we're just showing how better strategies to help your kids.
Yeah, so Nicole throws out redirection is a good idea, and it is a good idea. I'm looking for ideas on how to handle tantrums in one-time situations where the child cannot have what they want. So redirection can work, and it can work. Sometimes the right thing to do is you don't not only don't get it, but you go deal with it. Like if they're honestly, if a child has a tantrum in a store, um, you can give them what they want. That'll just reinforce it. You can try to calm them or talk to them. My suggestion would be leave the store and go home and give them a consequence, whatever it is. And you might have to do that again. You won't have to do it many times, but if you can invest the horror of going to the store and having not go to the store, etc., a couple of times, maybe three, I doubt it. The child will learn that won't work if they want to go to the store with you. So even though it was a hassle, long term, the number of times you don't have tantrums in the store will totally make up for that inconvenience. So part of it is you're trying to train them. Part of it you can distract them, but that doesn't need to be your only tool. I mean, honestly, you want to develop strategies too, because you're learning too about how do I help this child learn to deal with the situation, better strategies to get what they want.
Yeah, the main thing is okay, we don't want to have tantrums anymore. So what, and then you can start being creative about how to reward the child for not having them. And then that's going to build on itself. And we've talked to this about before also, when we're introducing new things to the kids, we play act it. Okay, play act what a tantrum looks like. Yeah. Show me a tantrum. And then they love doing that. And now stop. And now show me how you might ask this again or try to get this or whatever in a better way. Your kids are bright. They can come up with ideas too. But if you if your child is having tantrums and you go through this new, like, we're not going to do this anymore. I want to teach you some new strategies and all, and you do the rewarding, the consequence and the reward for a while. And you focus kind of on that's kind of your focus for a week or two or three or four. Now they will catch on.
Yeah. We used to have I used to play a game called Good Child, Bad Child. And they would say, go bad child. And they'd all, I'd say good child. And they'd sit quietly and look. They're real little. And I'd say bad child. And then they'd go bump each other, pretend each other and all the rest.
Scream.
And we'd play good child, bad child just to teach them, one, they had a will, so they're choosing, but also what the definition is, and maybe it's cruel and psychologically damaging to let them think they're being a bad child, but that doesn't mean they're a bad human. That means they're behaving in a bad way, and most everybody gets that stuff. All right, what other questions about this or anything else? It could be, it's somewhat related. All these things are that way, that we're learning skills and we're learning how to do things. It can be politeness. It can be being respectful. It can be not demandingness about what we're trying to do. And as I said, all this stuff I'm going to send to you a paper format or PDF format where you'll have it. You can go through it and think about it. If you're on our mailing list, I'll send it to the whole mailing list. If you're not, go to independenthomeschool.com and I'll be sure and send it to you or get access for you. Other questions? We got 15 more minutes.
When a child you can't give him what they want, and it doesn't even mean it's like, even it's a bad thing, like that would be wrong to do. It could be a really good thing, but you can't do it because it's finances or time or whatever, and so just being able to talk to, especially older kids, you can say, yeah, I understand that's disappointing. But it's just not going to happen. And you can tell them, the older they are, you might tell them some of the reasons, but okay, so what else can we do here? What else can we ask for?
Yeah, so Tansy actually is on our YouTube, our Zoom. So let me see if this works.
Cool.
If you you're welcome to talk.
Yeah.
Dr. Fred and Jody, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So Jody, speaking about that, emotionally regulating, how to teach to regulate a child. Yesterday, my 9-year-old daughter pulled me aside to a separate room, and she started to talk about how her day wasn't going as the way she planned, and she started to get teary-eyed. This is my child who gets emotionally stirred up very easily. So her tears start coming out, pouring out as if something really bad happened. I said, "What happened?" She said, "Mama, the science experiment, I didn't get to do that with you. I didn't do much at during the whole day. And right now, she had to take care of her little brother and a little cousin." And she said that was stressful. I said, um, that's not that really stressful. I had stress right now. I backed up my car and dented a new car while my husband is traveling. So he had no idea. I'm like, I have to face your dad.
Well,
And then
yeah. So, I mean, Jody will have kinder thoughts than I do. So let me get mine out of the way. But, I would say that could be on her level stressful. You can, I mean, that's not inappropriate to say, I understand how that could be stressful. But your point is really quite good, which is, but we all have stressful things that we go through. And maybe they're a big deal, maybe they're not. We'll figure out how to do the science experiment. Thanks for telling me. But, here's a stressful thing, and you give a counterexample, like you're not alone for sure.
Yeah, that comparison I think is really good. She's old enough to go, oh yeah, that is worse, mom. But also just the fact that look, everybody almost every day has things they're not happy about. So especially like you're saying, a 10-year-old older. So what are we going to do to deal with this? Because we don't want to just cry at the drop of a hat all the time, do we?
Right.
We want to. How can we handle this? How can you think about this, sweetie? Well, maybe I can do the science experiment later with mom. Maybe,
Well, her communicating with you is awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
And when somebody cries, I learned this from counseling. I just let them cry. I don't necessarily get on to them. I mean, if it's distracting, disturbing, but you are wanting to find what's so upsetting. And so you didn't get the science experiment. Why is that so upsetting? There's something else going on. It's probably not that, like, and I'll never get to do it, or I don't think you love me, or if I don't do my science experiment, the world's going to end. I don't know what she's thinking.
no, I think she's thinking it's because I have 4 other kids. She wants one-on-one time. I think that's it. Because the science experiment is just me and her, and no one other kids. So maybe she's just trying to say, "Mama, I just want a one-on-one time." But she did say a couple of weekends ago, but because my husband is traveling and I'm alone with 4 other kids, I'm not able to do that. And I think especially since we pulled the kids out from school a month ago,
Yep.
and her not seeing her friends, and then Mama not being available.
Yeah, that all makes
I
perfect sense.
Yeah.
So is she the oldest?
She is the second eldest. I have a 12-year-old boy.
Okay. So yeah, so if you can figure out how, I mean, how old's the one below her, the next one?
She is turning 7, so 2 years younger.
Yeah, so one of the things we were able to do, I mean, there are things I did eventually. I'd take one child, I'd have once a week, I'd do coffee with one of them or something like that, go to Starbucks. They're a little bit older, but you could do it at home too. And you could have a time just you and that child to hang out. We also did it with bedtimes. So as they age, they had different bedtimes. And so we were able to spend a little time with the older ones in a different way because the younger ones had gone to bed. But that's something to figure out together. I mean, literally, I think if you sat down with her and said, "Hey, I get it. You'd like to have time with me. I'd like to have time with you. I'm a little trapped right now, but why don't we figure out together a way to do that?" And she might have a better idea than all three of us combined.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I think she checked out. Thanks so much, Tansy,
Yes.
for hopping on and sharing that. Very,
Yes, thank you.
very helpful.
And I do think it's great that she's communicating with you. And I do like Fred's, like, if you want to dig behind, not every time a child's upset, especially like 2 and 3-year-olds, but an older child, and okay, why is that upsetting to you? And kind of dig a little deeper there, can be helpful.
Yeah, excellent. And look, here's one of the things to teach your children about emotions. This is probably the most important lesson. Here's how it goes. You're gonna be sad, and then later you're gonna be happy, or you're gonna be upset, and later you're gonna be fine. And life keeps doing this over and over until we die. That's how it goes. And so if we understand this about emotions, we don't have to freak out about them. They're just part of life. And what we want to do is learn to interact with them, work on our thinking, communicate better, etc., instead of freaking out. And the problem is freaking out gets rewarded, like it works, and that's what we're talking about tantrums. I can remember in counseling, I had some people's counseling while I was in a pastor in a church, and I remember one lady called me one night on a Friday evening, and she was in a panic, and life was bad and terrible and all kinds of terrible. And Friday evening is not really a good time for counseling. I don't know why I answered the phone, but it's what I did. And so I was going through, I said, let me figure out some things first, because I've found if I try to solve a mental emotional problem when there's a physical thing going on, it doesn't work. And the same with spiritual things. You know, if there's a physical thing, you can't solve it exactly with a spiritual answer. So I asked her in this process, I said, so much younger back then, I said, so when does your cycle start? And she got really quiet. I was just going through my checklist, and she went, is that what this is? And I said, why don't we meet, call Monday, or we'll meet Tuesday or whatever I said, but I found out also gives people hope, that we have a point in time. But she basically was fine. And once she knew that, yeah, this is a normal piece of my makeup and how I tend to be more emotional during these periods, once she knew that, she was fine. So once our kids understand that, look, emotions come and go, this is part of the game. Uh, that's part of the training, the strategy to not give too much weight to bad emotions,
Yeah.
and not too much weight to good emotions. They are what they are. And it's nice to know that, because then you're not biased. You're like an emotions racist.
Yeah.
I'm against certain emotions and I'm for other emotions, instead of, no, we're emotional human beings. And what's going on is the way we're thinking about it, the strategies we have are creating the problem.
Yeah. And that we're not stuck with our emotions. We can actually change them. And that's what, I mean, and we do, but I mean, we can actually notice, hey, I am angry right now. What can I do to get out of that? I don't want to be angry.
Right.
I don't want to continue to be sad. This thing happened, it was sad, but I don't want to continue this. What can I do about it?
Yeah. And it's a situation plus how you think about it. Oh no, I'm in trouble. We don't have money in the bank. I'm very upset. And then you go back and realize, oh, you misread something. You have plenty of money in the bank. You just went from upset to calm because of the way you thought about the circumstance. So once we learn how to do that, to really, what is the situation here really? And what else could be true here? How else can I think about it? This is what a good friend does for us. I used to do that, call them and say, hey, help me think about this. And I'd go through a process and I'd think it through and I'd be better. I have no real process, just talking.